Are we live? Can you hear us? Perfect. So yeah, hello and welcome to our session today, learning how SAP Cloud ALM supports your change control management process. Today on stage will be me, it's Moritz Giesler, I'm the product owner for the change deployment management part. We have Valeria Löschke as well, a colleague from SAP as well from the product management team. And we have the honor as well to have a customer on stage, so Cedric Weber, he's the head of ALM of the city of Bern. So we are glad to have him here. And I would like to share with you what's the agenda for today. So first we will start with a little introduction, what we plan, which direction we would like to head with the session today. Then Cedric will explain a little bit how the city of Bern is at the moment using SAP Cloud ALM change and deployment management for their maintenance processes. Then we will explain a little bit around the fix process, how it looks like at the moment, what you can do already, kind of an alternative to what Cedric will show beforehand. And then we will explain a little bit how this whole maintenance process will evolve, because that's a very important topic for most of the customers, of course, and most of the partners here in the room. And then we will talk a little bit about the transition phase at the end, how you could move over from Solution Manager to Cloud ALM. And now I will leave the stage, first of all, to Valeria for the introduction.
Thank you, Moritz. Hi, everyone. When we talk to Solution Manager customers about their charm transition to SAP Cloud ALM, we get a lot of questions around the maintenance use case. As we already know, SAP Cloud ALM supports us through all the phases of an implementation project, implementing new processes and solutions, but what about the maintenance use case? What about how to deal with fixes and enhancements of solutions that are already productive? And those are the questions we want to answer today. And I'm really delighted to have Cedric from Stadt Bern with us today, as he is going to share some insights about how Stadt Bern is using SAP Cloud ALM for maintenance activities. Hand over to you, Cedric.
Thank you, Valeria, and of course also thank you, Moritz, for your opening remarks. For me, it's a pleasure to present to you the SAP Cloud Change and Deployment Management for maintenance in the city of Bern. Also include our ITSM tool, the Matrix 42, and of course the SAP Cloud ALM. The table of contents: at first I will introduce myself and also the IT department, and next I show you our incident and change process, and next our major highlight, the integration of our ITSM tool inside the SAP Cloud ALM. And of course at the end for you some key tasks for take away. About myself, my name is Cedric Weber. I work since more or less 1.5 years in the IT department of the city of Bern, which I'm responsible for the SAP Cloud ALM, which includes the test management, the change management, the release management, and much more. And also I'm part in the SAP logistic module. Our IT department, we are more or less 90 employees, and we work as an internal service provider. Which means, if I speak from a customer, I mean other departments like the police, like real estate, for example. We manage over 3,700 active users with 2,400 workstations at nearly 300 locations. And for additional, our school with 11,000 devices and 15,000 users. But now, let's go inside our current situation and objectives back in 2022. Our situation back in 2022 was really not easy. Our special IT audit revealed some issues in our test and change management. But that was no surprise, because for our transport traceability, we just had an Excel file. We didn't even have the soul man. You know what I mean. And to eliminate all those problems together, we implemented together with BlueWorks the SAP Cloud ALM in the IT department of the city of Bern. Our timeline, you always need a strategy. You can put everything at once. You can't You can't everything at once, the change management, the test management, you need a strategy. Like I said before, back in 2022, it really was not easy, and we have to handle it. And we took the advantage to implement the SAP Cloud ALM. And we never was on the sole man. I think that was an advantage for us. Later, on 2023, we had the full focus on the S/4HANA project. Everything, every test cases, every feature, all go through the SAP Cloud ALM. And we from the IT city of Bern are really proud of that. Our 2000 features are successful implemented in our system landscape. In 2024, we implemented our SAP Cloud, the change management and also the test management and also the release windows. Before, we didn't even have release windows. In 2024, our major highlight, the integration of our ITSM tool, Matrix 42, inside the SAP Cloud ALM. And the next step in 2025, we want to introduce the automatic test cases with Rizentis, which allows to automate all processes. It's our target, our main target. Our two processes, we have the change process, which goes inside with a ticket in our ITSM tool, and then it's a classification in two risk levels, from low to high, routine, normal, and urgent. The routine one goes outside the CIB gremium. That allows us to work in a lean manner. It's really important. And the normal change goes inside the CIB gremium. CIB stands for Change Advisory Board Gremium. And for urgent changes, we had a special ECIB, which means the Emergency Change Advisory Board. And then we have a button in our ITSM tool. When I press it, there's directly built a user story or a feature with all references, with all the links, with all the ticket numbers, with all this description, with the ticket number, everything at once, with one button. But how we do it? Because it was really hard. At the beginning, our initial design was to put the data flow from the SAP Cloud ALM in the Matrix 42. Unfortunately, there was a lack of PI, and our security didn't allow it. That means we have to be creative together also with our partners of BlueWorks to find a solution. And now we build a webhook file which make a payload, and now we are allowed to put the data from the Matrix 42 inside the SAP Cloud ALM, which allows to create a user story or a feature. But now we can work in the lean manner. We can have the best idea. We can have everything, but it means nothing without the quality assurance. So we integrate our 4 release windows for incidents daily, our routine changes weekly, our normal changes monthly. I know monthly is, I think in a year we go upstairs, maybe in a quarter or something like that. But now for the start, for the acceptance, we are on a monthly release window. And urgent changes ASAP, which allows us to get a high system availability. That's the most important things for everyone. Not just for us, also for the employees, for the suppliers, for the customer, for everything. The conclusion, like I said before, we implemented the SAP Cloud ALM because we didn't have a transparent transport management, which revealed a special IT audit. To work in a lean manner, we defined an attachment with a webhook file, which allows us to with the API code, to get in our ITSM tool to build a user story or a feature in the SAP Cloud ALM. Our implementation process goes normally directly through a feature without a user story, if it's possible. You want to skip it. And our 4 release windows, like I said before, and yes, the important thing, I think, is the acceptance from the employees. We get it because we can build our transformation project full over the SAP Cloud ALM, and after this successful project, we had the acceptance. And now, some takeaways for you, maybe, I hope so. If it's possible, go directly to a feature, like I said before, because it didn't have to wait over a user story and then from the user story to the feature. And build a lean process so good as possible. And if there's a way, build for the routine change outside the CIB gremium. And for our quality assurance, we use normally the status successful tested. And we didn't go to test cases, and so we have more time for other projects. I have to say, to get the acceptance for your employees, work step by step. Now I'm at the end of my presentation. I really appreciate it with you guys. Feel free to connect with myself. And now I give the word back to Valeria. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Cedric, for giving us some insights about the maintenance process at your company. And now let me share with you another version of how the fixed process might look like. So if you have an external incident management tool, the process would start with creating a fix or incident, like requesting the fix you want to perform. And via API, you can then also automate the creation of a requirement in Cloud ALM. We have 2 options, or we distinguish 2 use cases here. You might want to create a requirement in a maintenance project, or, for example, if you are in the hypercare phase of an implementation project and might need to do some bug fixings after the go live, then, of course, you can also create a requirement from the implementation project. Of course, you can also start with the creation of the requirement if you don't have an external incident management ticketing tool. And in our use case here, the requirement will serve as a request for change as we know it from ITO. The next step would be to approve the requirement. Of course, we specify the enhancement or the bug fix we want to implement here, and then we go into the approval. It is possible to approve the requirement directly in the Cloud ALM tool, for example, if you have only one-step approval procedure. But, for example, if you want to utilize, let's say, a more comprehensive approval workflow, you have, for example, multiple steps in your approval process, then we would recommend to have a look at the SAP Build Process Automation, which gives you the possibility to define multiple approval steps. So this is done in the Build Process Automation, and via the APIs, it is possible when the last approver approves the requirement, then also the requirement is approved automatically in Cloud ALM. Next step, because of course we want to fix something, we need a feature. Feature is our transport vehicle, as you already know, hopefully. And out of the feature, we create a transport so that we are able to perform the fix in the development system. We also can assign a already existing transport from the development system. And here I have even some very good news for you. You can also assign a already released transport request. For those who know Solution Manager and Change Request Management, we need CCTS to be able to assign a release transport. This is not required here, so you can also assign a already released transport without the need of configuring something. So now we have our transport. We perform the fix in the development system. Now we are ready to test. So what do we do next? We create a TOC. It's also released automatically and deployed into the quality assurance system. We perform the unit tests in the quality assurance system, and as soon as the test is successful, we then can release and deploy the original transport request into the quality assurance system. And here we move then to the requirement. So you pass the requirement for testing, and we execute the acceptance test based on the original transport request. As soon as the acceptance test is successful, we go back to the feature, and of course, what do we need to do before we deploy to production? Of course, we need to approve it first, because we need this control, it's important. And afterwards, after the approval, we deploy the transport to the production system. And then hopefully your end user is happy, and we can confirm the requirement. So this is, as I already said, one possible fixed process flow you can implement and use in SAP Cloud ALM. Now, let's have a look, like a deeper look into the process status flow, and also put a landscape dimension to it. So as an example, we have, of course, the requirement and feature as an interplay, and we have a three-system landscape. We have a development system, we have a quality assurance system, and we have our production system. How do we start? With the requirement acting as a request for change. The requirement gets specified, the status is in refinement. Then we go into the approval. We approve the requirement. And as I already explained, you can also do a multi-steps approval by using SAP Build Process Automation capabilities. And then we go into status realization, in realization. The corresponding feature that has been created out of the requirement is set to status in specification. Here we create our transport, go to the development system and perform the fix. Status is accordingly set to implementation. Then we set the status of the feature to in testing, so that we can perform the unit test. So you know, technically, we have our TOC that is deployed to the quality assurance system. We perform the test. Once the test is successfully performed, we set the status of the feature to successfully test it. And then we move to the requirement and set the status to in testing, because hopefully you remember, we are doing our acceptance test on the requirement level based on the original transport request in the quality assurance system. The acceptance test is successful. We set the status accordingly to successfully tested of the requirement, and then we move back to the feature and approve the productive deployment. So we set the status to ready for production. We deploy into the production system. After the successful deployment, we set the status to deployed and can confirm the requirement. So this is how a fixed process status flow looks like in Cloud ALM for supporting the maintenance use case as part of your daily business. And with that, because we are not done, I would like to hand over to Moritz again to tell us about all the planned innovation and great stuff we have prepared for you for the maintenance process.
Thanks a lot, Valeria. All right. So thanks again as well to Cedric, because he shared a little bit, okay, what are the challenges as well in the maintenance process, and we still have some challenges there, of course, but we would like to evolve, of course, this whole maintenance process, not only now with the APIs, like Valeria showed it, yeah, where we can then have, of course, integrations as well with any ITSM tools. We would like to offer, of course, and that is as well a question that is often asked, for example, for notifications. Yeah, what can we do there? Yeah, so could be the right people in the process be notified via in-app notifications. Mainly it's about email notifications. So that's where we plan to have an assignment of different processes to a feature that shall be possible in future. So we are mainly looking here into the direction of having developer, a tester, the change manager, and the deployment manager there. Yeah, so we can easily think of, yeah, when the feature goes into testing, the tester would be informed. Of course, there will be the question around, okay, what about teams? Yeah, could we have test teams and stuff like that? That's definitely something that we have as well in mind, yeah, so that we offer that as well as an option. Or what's often asked as well is, yeah, if a feature goes ready for production, how can I inform the deployment manager? Yeah, of course, there you would need then the deployment manager on the feature. Then you could notify him or her accordingly, and as well if an import fails or something like that. Second thing, the test case integration. Yeah, so that's still missing in the features, and we know, which we saw already as well in the process. Yeah, we have then the acceptance test on the requirement. Yeah, but we maybe have a unit test or anything beforehand, IT test that is done on the feature. Therefore, we would need to have the test case assignment, of course. Yeah, so there it is as well planned. Yeah, so that we have then an N-to-1 relation between one or several test cases to one feature that can be used then for your testing purposes before you switch then the status of a feature to successfully tested, that we would check then beforehand, of course, that the tests have been passed successful. And last but not least, and that was, I think, mentioned as one of the key takeaways as well from Cedric, yeah, so it's about the defect integration. Yeah, so we need to have options as well to assign the defects then directly to the features. So to correct test defects for new implementations, enhancements, or as well then fixes in such a sense, and there it will be then the same. Yeah, you could have then several defects that could be assigned to one feature. There we would later on as well look into an option when we have a new object type called fixes, yeah, so that for regression tests or something like that, if something goes wrong, you could then maybe as well just create a new type fix in future, yeah, so then you could assign there as well such a defect. Yeah, so these are the plans to at least close the main gaps, yeah, that were mentioned by Cedric already, yeah, regarding the processes. But of course, we would like to offer there as well additional functionality, like for example, the deployment scheduler. And if you have noticed the Teams message in between, yeah, so the development team is heavily working on the deployment scheduler. Yeah, so we are really working on it. That's the lab preview that we have at the moment. That's how it should look like. It's Fiori element. We will have there, the base is the deployment plan. Yeah, you need to set a title, of course, for your deployment schedule. And then you can select, based on the deployment plan, your different target tenants. You can select the schedule time, and then you can decide, do I need to have a recurrence here? Do I need to have then as well maybe the release, yeah, that I would like to use to bundle the different features that should go then to maybe a test stage then at a recurrent time or frequency, and you can as well add the feature status there. Yeah, so these would be then options how we could then identify which of the changes should go then to the particular systems. Of course, it would be an option as well to schedule a deploy to production. Yeah, at the moment, we have the deploy to production button in the feature overview where you can bundle then for releases as well the deployment, but here you could as well schedule it. So that's just summarizing it more or less. Yeah. So and what to mention here in addition is it's as well targeted to offer then the deployment for hybrid use cases. Yeah. So we would like to cover in the target tenants, of course, then as well the CTMS nodes, so that in the system groups you could then as well add or assign then the transport management, the cloud transport management service nodes, so that you could say, okay, if we have a hybrid use case, we would like to then schedule our deployments then to the test tenant as well as to the test client, maybe on your on-prem system at the same point in time. And then another thing that is, I think, something that a lot of customers, partners are waiting for, that's the transport checks. So here we have the outlook. So the first transport checks will be there in the feature itself. As you can see, I will try it on that side, maybe with the laser pointer. Let's see if we can see it. There is this manual action, and we would target to mainly safeguard production system at the beginning. So means in status ready for production of a feature, you could then trigger manually checks for downgrade protection as well as for cross references. And you would get then, of course, the results then directly in the feature, like we see here in the transport check section below. And we can then as well deep dive into the results where we see, okay, which objects or which features are in conflict, which transports maybe are in conflict, because maybe it could be that some of the transports are not yet assigned to features, and then you could dig deeper into the details there. And of course, further down the road, we would like to then extend this framework so that you can embed as well your custom checks. I think that was mentioned as well several times, so that custom checks could be then as well embedded here. All right, coming to the transition phase. One major point, of course, the capability transition timeline. As you realized as well during the last year, so it's always difficult to put all of this on a timeline because, from capacity perspective and stuff like that, it could be tough then as well to offer all these options. But what we are working on, so TOCs, we have already the transport of copies. What we are heavily working on at the moment is then on the one hand side, the deployment scheduler, that's more purely in the Cloud ALM UI. And then I would say more in the machine room on the STPI level about the DGP cross-reference checks and the whole check framework. Check framework includes as well then for 2025 together with the check framework UI, where we would then as well display the results on Cloud ALM and ATC checks, because that's as well often the question about ATC checks. So in the check framework, we will have then, of course, as well ATC checks. But it's mainly focusing on the transport-related checks there. In 2025 plus, we have definitely things on the table as well from perspective of how to make the process, I would say more controlled, so that you have there more governance on top with, for example, then an embedded for ICE approval, where we are checking then as well that, for example, the requester is not the one then approving something for production or something like that, what could happen. We would like to offer then for the emergency imports, we would like to offer options there as well. So for the fixed process, that's important so that it would be then respected maybe later on as well during the project or the release import of a project. Route manipulation, it's more like that we focus more on the system groups and what's in the system groups, so that you could say, for example, some of the clients for some period of time, they should not be supplied with changes, for example. That's more meant with route manipulation stuff. And then we go into these topics, critical objects. There we would then have maybe as well the counterpart with allow lists. We need to see for standard changes or something like that you would like to cover to embed it. And as well the phase cycle. That was, I think, mentioned yesterday already a little bit. So based on the releases in the deployment plan, so that you could say we have different phases, and then accordingly we would steer as well what can be done in terms of transports. And the lower part, in the STPI area, so that's then mainly the topic about cross-system object locking. So there we are focusing and targeting, first of all, the cross-system object locks as a foundation for the retrofit, because we identified as well that for most of the customers, most of the partners, it's more important to have the downgrade protection checks or the cross-reference checks. The cross-system object lock is mainly used then for some retrofit activities and stuff like that. So that's why we said we focus first on having their kind of minimum viable scope with the cross-system object locks to serve the purpose of a retrofit, that we can do retrofit automation. And then later on, we would then as well in the UI have some analytics views based on where are collisions. So I think we had it on former slides, we had it like a collision check UI or something like that, but that was confusing to each and everyone, I think. So it's just a part of the check framework UI, so we will have there some analysis or reporting options. Okay, and that's mainly then where Roadmap Explorer comes into the game, of course, to check on, okay, when are the things planned? So that's where we would like to then have really then per quarter then the information, what will be the next big ticket things that we would like to ship and what we like to offer. But another part, of course, in your transition preparation, and we're in the transition track, so that's why I would like to focus on that once, and the last slide at least. We have the readiness check available, and I would recommend to you there to as well attend the session from Frank Jungmann and Gustavo Kunst afterwards, because they will tell you what are the news in the readiness check, so which new features are coming in, mainly related to the change management area. And we would recommend, based on that, to find your transition starting point based on 3 dimensions: volume, complexity, criticality. So what is meant with that? We have kind of a triangle for it. So volume would be like, okay, you have your change cycles, where you see which number of requests for changes do we have? How many changes do we have there? Do we have a lot of transport requests? Yeah? Is it a small amount of transport requests? So that's where you can then figure out, okay, maybe which of the projects, which of the change cycles that you are using, where do we have a high volume? Where do we have a lower volume? Lower volume would be maybe a good starting point to check, okay, these could be projects where you could start then as well with Cloud ALM, using Cloud ALM. Then we have the second dimension, the complexity. So that's then mainly about the cycle types and the type description as well. How many tracks we do have in those change cycles and which capabilities are used. Yeah? So things like retrofit, solution documentation integration, repacking, stuff like that. So that's the second part, I would say, where we say, or the second area where we say you need to have a look into to figure out, okay, from complexity perspective, could that be something we would like to start with, or is it too complex for the time being? We need to look at the Roadmap Explorer, see when the new functionalities are kicking in. And then it's kind of the combination, more or less. Volume complexity goes then into more or less the criticality topic as well. Yeah? So, of course, if you have a high volume, high complexity, it's as well most likely critical, so that you say, okay, would we like to start a transition with it? Maybe not, but you will get there as well this I would say, view on which relevance do the systems have of the track. Of course, so if it's your central S4 system for finance or something like that, maybe it's not the best choice to start with it if something is not working as expected at the beginning. Or you are missing there some of the functionality, I would say, that you would definitely need to have because you would like to rely on that. And of course, then, as mentioned, the combination of volume and complexity goes into the criticality as well. So that's why we said that's kind of this triangle. And as mentioned, we will see then in the session afterwards how the readiness check could support there in future, which new information we will bring with the readiness check, and as well how such a transition could then look like from how you face such a transition. So that's what the colleagues will then as well go into afterwards. All right. Having said that, to just maybe wrap it up a little bit, we have seen that, for example, for the Stadt Bern, it was the decision to directly go for Cloud ALM. So they had this comparison between Solution Manager and Cloud ALM. They said, okay, we start already with the maintenance process with Cloud ALM. So that's definitely a good sign to see that customers see that it is possible to use it, as well with the integration with an ITSM tool. And we identified the gaps, of course. We know that there are still some gaps, but we hope that we could then, together with you as the customers, as the partners, kind of rise as well with Cloud ALM, because we would like to see that we will have new functionality coming up. We have to be weekly feature deliveries, and now it's time to adopt it. All right, that's it from my end. As usual, you can spread the word with the hashtag ALM Summit. And then I would say maybe Cedric, Valeria, you can join me on stage. So we would open it up for the Q&A. You're the next one, Ricardo. So there is another question.
Hi. Did I understand that correct, that you separate then the DGP checks from CSOL? Because at the moment, Focus Build uses CSOL for their DGP checks.
We are separating it, so we have a different way of doing it. So there are, internally in the STPI, there are already check reports to do so, where we do some sequence checks. That's what we are leveraging at the moment. So in the STPI, it's like you have to have RFC connections between your production system, development system, then in that sense, because we don't have the solution manager framework. And then we are leveraging these capabilities to do the DGP checks in a similar way, but we are not relying on the CSOL here.
So the DGP checks relying totally on local information of Cloud ALM?
No, it's the
connectivity to the managed systems.
It's all the checks will be done on the managed system, and it will just report back the information then to the Cloud ALM. So we will not store the information of all the objects and stuff like that on Cloud ALM, and we all do this and then decentrally in the managed systems, and the managed systems will report back then to our check framework, to our check service that we have then in the Cloud ALM backend, the results, and they will then be populated in the features.
Okay. The other question about the QA checks, ATC hub integration, is that?
That's as well planned. I think I mentioned it yesterday in the session where we were talking about dual maintenance, so dual landscape maintenance as well. An ATC hub integration is as well planned. Now, of course, we need to have then there maybe a development or a test tenant that needs to then act as the ATC hub in the landscape, but that's planned as well to have there some ATC hub integration if that's wanted. Yeah.
And is there planned something like a KPI on the supporting documents?
KPI on supporting documents? Maybe you could elaborate.
For example, we need some documents to progress the change, for even urgent change. And
okay. You mean some
KPI indicating that it's available or not, and the state.
Some check framework in that sense. So if the process. Yeah, so that's where we at the moment look more into the APIs, yeah, so that it could be externalized through the workflow management. Yeah, we need to see that's definitely something we cannot tackle 2025. We need to see further down the road if we can look into it. But it's always the topic about the configuration, customizing options in Cloud ALM. They are quite minimal at the moment, yeah, so when we would like to leave it as it is, yeah, so that's why we are looking more at the APIs than with API leverage that you could check then, and if you would like to switch the status, yeah, workflow extension could check for is document ABC that you have defined in your workflow extension, are these documents there, then I could proceed, otherwise the status is set back more or less. Ricardo had a question over there first and then over there.
Only two questions, a small one and a bigger one. The small one is I saw the screenshot of the scheduler, and it's similar to the cycle import. And very popular is the checkbox ignore component check. Really popular.
Yeah.
I didn't see something like that. Do you plan for the on-premise system something similar, or would it be a gap? And the second question, how about the four-system landscape? They're also very popular.
Yeah, so maybe answering the first question, in the minimum viable scope, so at the beginning, we are not planning to have this option, yeah, to ignore then the component versions or something like that. But we have thought about, of course, that the deployment scheduler, most likely it will be the same app. Yeah, it could be as well a different one, so that we have there something like a deployment cockpit, release management cockpit, where you could as well decide such things. Yeah, some administrative actions that you could trigger there, so where you could set then as well, okay, which conditional mode should be used, for example, then for the import. That's definitely something we are looking into, but it will not be there in the first minimum viable scope that we have with the deployment scheduler. And the second question, yeah, sorry, please.
Just a remark, so that means that like the next time it would mean that you would need to either switch off the check, or you can also define exceptions in the managed system, which is part of the basic TMS functionality.
And the four-system landscape?
To what exactly are you referring there as well, to the deployment scheduler, or?
No, it's general. I saw now the process flow, and it was a QA system.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have not one customer which has 3 system landscape, all 4 system landscapes.
This was only, yes, yeah. 4 system landscape is also supported. Technically speaking, we get the information from TMS about the system, so in features we totally support also 4 system landscape. The process flow, we did that to make it more simple, to be able to emphasize the different steps more clear for you, but for sure this is only an example, and for system landscape is absolutely supported.
Yeah, and maybe to add on that, we want to have then as well this system group integration, like I mentioned. We will have, in that sense, more and more embedded, I would say, in the whole process. So that would mean that we have already the pre-prod system role, right? And that would mean, so as soon as we have it then as well entered there, and we are more or less listening to the system groups more, in that sense it's better integrated, then we could as well attach it maybe to different status values, so that we say we do some checks, or it can be done through the workflow extensions. So that's the idea behind.
Thank you. My question would also be in the direction of downgrade protection checks and cross-reference checks. You mentioned that the checks will be at feature level, so you probably imagine why I'm asking this, because if I have some objects which are locked in other features, or the precedent version is in another feature, will I have to chase around my tail, or is there a deployment bundle? Can we bundle features to deploy and that the checks will consider this and make sure that my objects are all correct?
Yeah, very valid question. Yeah, so at the end, I can just second more or less what I mentioned before. For a deployment scheduler, it's our minimum viable scope, so it's our starting point. But of course, further down the road, we would like to have then, based on releases, yeah, bundles that you would like to deploy to production. And of course, we need to have then this release bundle or something like you bundle it, and that we can do the checks then for downgrade protection cross-reference for the whole bundle.
Yeah, absolutely, that's what makes sense. Yes. A second quick question, it's about also the 4-tier landscape more or less and the 3-tier. According to the process that we saw on the screen, basically there's no testing in development, all testing is done in the quality system, which means, as per our own experience, that the quality system is permanently broken because developers are pushing always their changes to the quality system. And this is a challenge we have actually, because our enterprise architects insist on having a stable system integration testing system. So is this something a challenge also that you face, and do you have an idea how to overcome this challenge? Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure how to answer the question. So is it more like going to the direction that you would like to do the test in the development system first, or is it more going into the direction how we could support the process that it will not break the QAS systems?
Yeah, I would say if we have any flexibility or freedom to also change the process slightly, that we would make the quality system more stable, for example, that we would not allow developers to push to quality at any time, but that we would have a controlled deployment to quality, for example. That's one idea that our enterprise architects are throwing at us.
So that goes maybe into this direction of the phase cycle. That would be more lightweight, I would say, like you have to do it in Solution Manager when you are configuring it. Yeah, so where you have then maybe the options to have the different phases on the release. That could be one option. If it goes into the direction of the transport of copies, yeah, of course, we would then have their phases as well, where we say, okay, we are limiting or restricting creating transport of copies, yeah, for developers. We thought about as well other options, right? So if you could then have a switch, yeah, per project or whatsoever, they just say, okay, talks are at the moment not allowed, yeah, and you can switch back or something like that, but that's more difficult. So most likely it will go into this direction then with the phase cycle. We need to see, most likely we cannot touch it in 2025 yet. We do our best, but that would be definitely, I would say, the option then with the phase cycles there.
Okay, so 2 is a good number, so I also have 2 questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, now you have presented how to implement fixes by using features. I remember last year you mentioned that it's planned to have fixes or corrections as their own, let's call it, transaction type. Is it still planned?
That's still planned, yeah. So it's not on the slide, I would say there. I need to maybe add it, yeah, so that I don't get the question anymore. But yeah, of course, we have planned as well a different object type that's called fixes, yeah, in the first hand, so that you can distinguish between features, enhancements, implementations, and things that need to be fixed, yeah, bug fixes, of course. And that would be then as well, of course, the baseline, so that later on, when you have then maintenance running, yeah, in parallel to projects, yeah, that we can then check on, okay, how we handle then the fixes in parallel to the release.
But rather for vision and end of 25, 26, maybe 28.
I think we have the object type we have already planned, I think, for 2025, if I'm not mistaken. The point is more like how we handle it then in combination then of fix and, so maintenance pace in that sense, or fix pace and enhancement or implementation pace.
All right. And the second one, now you've shown that we, in the example process, that we have for the APIs, a plug at approvals. Is it also possible at another step, or is it at the moment only for the approvals possible?
So the plan at the moment is for the features it will be a bit different, right? For the requirements we have at the moment only the option that you could say, I would like to have for one project one workflow subscription, and that's only going when you go to the ready for approval status, I think. So then it would trigger the external workflow, and then it's waiting until it comes back. You cannot trigger then the approval from the UI anymore. For the features, we are of course then aiming that we can have options as well, that you select which status switch, means based on the action, where you could then add a subscription for. So for example, when you would say, I would like to hand over to test for a feature, you go into the external workflow, and then you can define your workflow, and it's only going to in testing status then when the workflow is coming back successfully.
Similar to PPF and Solomon, maybe.
Kind of that, yeah. So such a thing, but with the APIs, so that you have these options to have variables or variants in there as well then later on.
All right, thank you.
Quick question, first of all, thanks for the presentation. Is there a plan to implement the transport strategies as well in Cloud ALM?
Transport strategies?
Yeah, like for example, in Solution Manager, we can define the transport strategies to import the certain transports into quality or in production, for example.
It's like selective import, status driven.
Import status.
Status dependent import. Okay, now I got it. Thanks a lot. So that's something that would be possible with the deployment scheduler, because we have there as well the feature status in. You have to release, and based on that, we would then collect all the transports that would be relevant then for the import to your test stage. So that's kind of the status dependent import scheduler in that sense. You can leverage the deployment scheduler for such cases as well. Thanks.
Yeah, short question.
Yes, please.
Back to the 4-tier landscape. Maybe I phrased in a different way. I would be looking forward to seeing some kind of recommendation on how to deal with the handover to release status. Which entities to use in which way, just as some kind of guidance to discuss with customers.
We don't have the guidance yet, I would say, but it's definitely something that we can take with us, so that we add there some guidance. We wanted to anyway have maybe some best practice guides for 3-tier, 4-tier landscapes, how you can handle it now and what will come next, so that you can then, or we can as well incorporate it into the best practices, the new functionalities that are kicking in. But we will definitely take it as an input, and we'll try to offer something there from our end.
Thank you for the presentation. That was really good. I do have a question regarding to using change deployment tool through the Cloud ALM in conjunction with this change management. Any best practices or recommendation using both change deployment tools through the BTP along with the
Cloud Transport Management service for the BTP, you mean, or?
Yes, yeah. In the Cloud ALM, there's an app for the change deployment along with the change management.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it yesterday. So we have, or we had kind of a legacy integration in that sense, of the Cloud Transport Management service with the Cloud ALM. But there we were running into technical limitations. But in general, it is possible to connect your own Cloud Transport Management service instance as well to Cloud ALM.
That's what I was referring to, because within that, we can take care of so many different type of SAP products.
Yep.
That's one of the advantage of it. And then.
Yeah, so it's, I think that was as well a brief discussion we had yesterday in one of the influencing sessions. Yeah, so at the end, CTMS, so the Cloud Transport Management Service, and that's maybe a topic for my colleagues. One colleague was there yesterday, so I will as well hand it over to him as a feedback. So we discussed a little bit around, so for different SAP Cloud solutions, it's a different way of integrating as well with CTMS. So there was as well the ask for reference architecture or something like that and more guidance on that. From Cloud ALM perspective, we streamlined it in a way that we said Cloud ALM can be connected now to your own CTMS instance just by adding a destination in the sub account, so that's easier, and then you can follow the documentation on the CTMS end. But I will maybe just take this as well as a feedback, and I will try to then as well incorporate it into documentation and into guides with the colleagues from the CTMS team. Welcome. I think we need to maybe leave the stage. I'm not sure. Maybe one last question, if there is one. A short one.
Short one and quick answer.
Short one. Not short two, only short one.
Okay.
All right, then the last action, of course, you can as well add feedback while rating the session. Thanks a lot.